Thank you for inviting me. And what I am going to speak to you all about is almost forgotten science, which is called Mandala Vaatika. Yeah, Vatika, we would all know, it means gardens, right? Mandala in Sanskrit actually means a circle, but it is largely used to denote sacred geometry. And I stumbled upon this ancient science when way back, I think it was in the year 2000 or something like that, when Sri Sri asked me to develop a garden for him in the Art of Living ashram in Bangalore. I was in Dubai at that time. And, I just asked him, so give me a brief, what do you want in this garden? He said, say 5,000 years ago, if there was an ashram, what would the garden have been like? Just do it like that. Now that really got me thinking. And then I started to do a lot of digging into understanding what were the principles of garden design in the ancient Vedic times. Our Vedic civilization, which was largely nested in that valley of the mythical river Saraswati, or now the extinct river Saraswati, that Saraswat civilization which was there, that was a Vedic civilization. Now, these people, whatever they did it in pursuit of a higher truth. If they philosophized, it was for a higher truth. If they did Ayurveda, it was for a higher truth. If they did geometry, it was for a higher truth. Astronomy, astrology, whatever, anything they pursued, any activity was always directed towards a higher truth. And it is not surprising, therefore, that even their garden design was established on principles which would allow the user of that particular Vatika to experience a deeper perception of the ultimate nature of all reality. So when I started to do research, I found that there was a tremendous science and there was very precise scientific principles on which gardens were established in the Vedic period. And all of them were based on sacred geometry. So you would have, there are some which you would have heard of even today, like we have something called the Nakshatra Vana. You've got the Rashi Vana, you've got Navagraha Vana. Yeah, so these are still available, although they are not really established today on the basis of the exact principles that are there, that are delineated in our ancient texts. But there are several chapters in our Rig Veda which give the basis of what this geometry should be. And then I found that there were hordes of Vatikas. There was Siddhi Vinayaka Vatika, there was Varalakshmi Vatika, there was the Durga Mandala Vatika, there was the Saptarishi Vatika. There were so many designs and principles.
Please mute, Aniket, please mute everyone.
Yes. So there were so many garden designs that I was fascinated. Many of these texts actually are not in India. And these texts I found in the Indische Bibliothek in the University of Gutenberg in West Germany, where Max Müller had done the translations of these texts. And it was so fascinating for me to know that there were so many types of Vatikas, gardens, and the geometry for each of these gardens was so precisely given. So what they would have is, they would have a piece of land in which they would make a design, a mandala. So you would have a Durga Mandala or a Saptarishi Mandala, or you would have a Subramanya Mandala, or you would have a Sudarshana Mandala, you would have a Vishnu Mandala, you would have a Shiva Mandala, you would have a Rudra Mandala. So these mandalas would actually be drawn using just a string and a peg. They never used any measuring device because it was always in proportions, in the ratios. Yeah, and they would draw these very complicated mandalas. And every space in that mandala would be populated by a particular plant. And it is detailed which plant would go into which slot in that mandala. So which house in the mandala which would house which plant, all this is given in great detail in the Vatika. So let us just have a quick look at one of the designs that is there, which will talk about, let me just do a quick screen share and I'll tell you just for you to understand what is what here. Do you all see it on the screen now? It's okay, right? So this is typically the Mandala Vaatika design for the Siddhi Vinayaka Mandala. Yeah? And what you see here is a geometric design which is based on very, very precise principles. Every ratio is very, very detailed. It is detailed in the texts and exact ratio. It doesn't matter whether this garden is 100 square feet or 100 acres. It is only the proportions that are needed. Now, if you looked at this particular mandala, in the center, you see a star. Yeah. Now, actually, the star has got a very interesting thing. This star is called the Star of David, and it is available in sacred geometry all across the planet. If you go to the Judaic traditions of Israel, you go to the Freemasons traditions, you go to the Mayan and Inca civilizations, the Arabic civilizations, everywhere you go to the Buddhist mandalas, you will find all this Star of David is a very, very precise geometry. And there is a reason for this. But in this particular mandala, there is something very interesting that happens. You will see now when I sort of fade out the rest and take out one thing, here is a triangle. Okay. Now, this triangle actually represents the forces of movement. It is the upward movement of the forces. And this is typically called the, this is typically called the triangle that is given for the Shakti. Okay. Now, if you see the next part of this mandala, you will find that what has happened. Somebody is annotating and I cannot move the screen now. Kashmira is trying to annotate, so I don't have control over my screen now. Could you...
Aniket, will you just check?
Kashmira wants to annotate, but I have no control over the screen now.
1 minute, sir.
Kashmira? Kashmira? Okay.
Sir, can you try now?
I will just, I think what I'll do is I'll stop the sharing and restart again. And then
yes, maybe that's better.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. You see it. So this triangle is very important because this is the triangle which is talking about the upward movement of the energy, and this is the Shakti. This is related to the Shakti. Now you will see there is another triangle. Now this is a triangle which is giving the downward movement, and this is related to the Shiva energy. Yeah. So you have got something that is a latent energy which is full of potential, and then you have got this one which is activity. And when these two intersect, you get this Star of David. Yeah. Now it is very interesting because when you take the story of Ganesha itself, Siddhi Vinayaka itself, how did Vinayaka come into existence? He came when Parvati created an idol, a form, a doll, using turmeric paste, which she was applying on herself because she wanted to have a bath. And with that paste, she made this and breathed life into that. And then Shiva comes along. You know the story. He comes along, and then Ganesha, who's guarding, he leaves the he doesn't allow Shiva inside, so Shiva gets angry, chops his head off. You know that entire story. And then he says, okay, bring me the first living head that is there, person's head whom you will find. He tells his sevaks, and they bring him an elephant's head and they put it. This is actually encapsulated in this particular mandala. Okay, it is the Ganesha, the Shiva, the Siddhi Vinayaka is actually an energy field. It is a field. It is a wave function. It's a tattva. In Sanskrit, we call it a tattva. It is a tattva which is formed by the combination of two tattvas, two fields. One is the field of Parvati and one is the field of Shiva. And together, they form this energy field which is called Ganesha. And if you see the center portion of it, it is actually a tube. It's like a tube. It's a kaleidoscope tube. Why is it a tube? Because Ganesha Tattva, the energy of Vinayaka, is connected to our Mooladhara Chakra, which is our basal chakra, which is the point of entry for the energy. If energy has to manifest in us, the point of entry is the Mooladhara Chakra. And that is why he is called Lambhodara. That lam sound is operating at the base of our spine, and then that energy, it opens so that energy comes in. Yeah. So these are the kind of things that you will find in a mandala. It's a very deep science. I'm just giving you the very tip of the iceberg, but how all this gets created. Now, for example, the 8 lotus petals. You will find this in Mahanaya Buddhism, for example. You will actually find these petals representing the eightfold path. Yeah. Eightfold path of living, the right living. So, but in our mandala, this mandala, these are actually 8 manifestations of the tattva. One manifestation would be belief, the right belief, that is called sankalpa, the dhrida, the resolve, the speech, the vakya, the karya, that is the action, the life force itself, which is the jiva, the effort, which is the shrama, the thinking, the right thinking, which is the soch, and then the peace, that we all manifest that energy of peace. Yeah. So that is the shanti. So many such things happen, and this is how a Siddhi Vinayaka Mandala Vaatika would be established. So there are precise details of how to draw this particular mandala, what should be the proportions, and then you will see that there are 4 openings. You will find 4 openings. Always the top will be to the north, and then you will find that these openings are, in some mandalas, they will be closed, but in this particular mandala, Vinayaka Mandala, it will be open. So when you have a mandala like this, you establish a garden. We will come back to this slide, but this would be typically how a garden would actually be established. Now, you can do this on your terrace. You can do this on a small balcony. You can do this in a garden that you have. You can do it in a public park. The proportions will remain exactly the same. Yeah. So in Siddhi Vinayaka Mandala Vaatika would typically look like this, and it would be populated by 21 plant parts. Yeah. So in an actual garden, you would have these trees itself, like you would have the machi tree, you would have the brahati tree, the bilav tree, the durvam tree, the badri, like that. You'll have 21 trees which will actually populate the garden. But what they also realized, the ancients, was not everybody would have a large garden. So they created a concept where you could actually draw this mandala on a tabletop using sand or a paper. Today we can use a paper. In the olden days, they used to use sand. And a small thing, maybe it's like a foot by a foot, yeah? A small mandala you draw, and then you populate. Instead of growing a tree there, you take the plant part and you put it there. And you do that with a mantra. Okay? So, Uma Putraya Namaha Machi Patram Samarpayami. So you chant this mantra and you offer these plant parts to this mandala. And this can be done inside your house. You can do it at home. So this is a very beautiful science which brings together three types of energies, three types of wave functions. One wave function is coming from the geometry, and we'll see how it comes from geometry. The second wave function is coming from the sound of the mantra. And the third wave function is coming from the plant part. Why plant part, you will ask? Because if you see the traditional homas, the yagyas, what is being offered in those yagyas? It is plant parts, it is seeds, it is fruits, it is leaves, it is roots, it is bark, etc. All those are being offered because when the frequencies of the geometry, the sound, and the plant, they combine together, then it is said that certain portals open. And through those portals, you can get a glimpse of the nature of reality. So if we need to understand this particular concept of reality, then we need to understand a little bit about what is the basis of all this. What is really the basis of this Mandala Vaatika? Why is it that gardens were made that way? What was the science behind it? Now, to understand that, we have to understand where science today is. And what really amazes me is that very few people in our common, as common people, very few of us really understand what is the cutting edge research that is going on in science today in the understanding of our reality and understanding this creation. We all think that this creation is very real, right? Because I can touch this computer, you're sitting on a chair, you can touch things, you can smell things, you can taste things. Therefore, these are all physical objects and we live in a physical world, right? Now, this is what science had been saying for some time, that everything is made up of molecules. Those molecules are made up of atoms, and atoms are made of electrons, protons, neutrons, etc., etc. And therefore, we have this whole universe created. But today, that is not the case. And if I've put together a few video clips, which will tell you what the scientists are thinking about and what is their understanding of the physical world that surrounds us and we live in today. And these are from, curators of science, which have got the latest information. This information that I'm sharing with you might not be more than a year and a half old. Yeah. So let's quickly try to go here. And the idea would be for you to get a quick glimpse at what we are talking about here.
What is the universe really made of? What is truly fundamental in the reality that we perceive? In 400 BC, Greek philosopher Democritus came up with the idea of atoms as being fundamental. He believed that these were solid pieces of matter which could not be divided any further. 2,300 years later, in 1897, J.J. Thomson discovered something smaller than an atom, called the electron. And in 1912, Ernest Rutherford discovered that atoms had nuclei. Then we found that nuclei were composed of protons and neutrons. These were thought to be the fundamental components that all things are made of until the 1960s, when we found that neutrons and protons were composed of even smaller things called quarks. Two kinds, up quarks and down quarks. Today, everything that you can see around you is thought to be made up of just these three particles: electrons, up quarks, and down quarks. That's what all atoms are made of. Your phone, your desk, your skin, your grass, everything. This is what most people are taught in science class. The only problem is, it's not true. And physicists have known this for decades. These particles are really not fundamental. The best theory in physics tells us that there really are no particles at all.
So we get now to understanding where science is. And the reason why I'm playing these videos is because I'll very quickly converge to what our Vedic tradition tells us about the nature of reality. And you will be more than surprised to see the convergence in the thought. The latest that is there in science, cutting edge science, and then what today is available to the common man in terms of the Vedic knowledge. Because Vedic knowledge, as you know, for a long time, it was very cloistered knowledge. It was available only to a few people. But today, a lot of us have got far deeper access into the Vedic traditions, right? So let's just try to explore a little more of what science is saying, and then we will come back to what the Vedic traditions have to say.
The idea of particles, even the particles that I've talked about numerous times composing the standard model, is not what the universe is actually made of. The particles are fiction. They're convenient representations that are not really the best understanding of the universe today. The fundamental nature of the universe are not particles, but fields. These are fluid-like substances that can be perturbed, they can vibrate and experience excitations. If you take a strong metal box and remove everything from it, all the gases, all the atoms, all the photons, what will be left in that box? This is what we think of as a vacuum, like the vacuum of empty space. But in fact, this vacuum is alive with fields, and they're constantly moving and changing. The Heisenberg certainty principle means that a quantum field cannot sit still. Instead, they're moving and vibrating, changing their value over time. This is a computer simulation of all the bubbles that you see popping and bursting are perturbations of empty space. Particles are constantly being created and destroyed in this emptiness. But these particles are really excitations of fields that pervade all of space.
So you see what science is telling us now, that there are no particles, because everything, whether it is a proton, a quark, a neutron, or whatever, they are only fields. And these fields exist everywhere through the universe. Even in the deep space where we say nothing exists and it's a pure vacuum, these fields exist. And this is what our Vedic tradition has always been saying, that everything is pervaded by something called a Brahman. Yeah. And that is a tattva. What we call tattva in Vedic tradition, and what the scientists are calling as fields, they start to become more and more interesting. So let's just get a little more idea of what these fields are that he is talking about.
So what in the heck are these fields, and what do they tell us about the nature of reality? Another way to visualize fields is to imagine the volume of the universe being filled with water, as if we were living in an ocean. Now imagine that instead of water, the ocean is filled with multiple fluids, about 17 different kinds of fluids, and these fluids are of different colors. This may look really spectacular and weird, but this is somewhat analogous to what our universe actually looks like, except that you cannot see these fields. All you can see is really only the excitations of 4 of the fields. You can see photons or light, which are vibrations in the electromagnetic field. Electrons are vibrations in the electron field. Up quarks and down quarks make up the protons and neutrons in the nucleus of all atoms. They are vibrations in the up quark field and down quark field, respectively. Amazingly, everything that you can see around you, your phone, your desk, flowers and trees, the earth below your feet, everything is composed of just these 4 fields.
So this is getting curiouser and curiouser, because science today, especially after the discovery of the Higgs particle, Higgs boson, they have now confirmed that only because of interacting fields, an illusion of matter is created. And it will be very interesting to understand how that illusion itself is created. So we will just have one more video from the scientific community so that we can understand really what they are talking about and how these fields create what we experience as a physical
But there
universe.
appears to be a dilemma here, because you have learned in school and in my videos too that quantum mechanics is all about discrete things. That's why it's called quantum. But fields are continuous, not discrete. So there appears to be a conflict here between the idea of the discreteness of particles as presented in quantum mechanics and the continuous nature of fields. So how are these two ideas reconciled? The combining of field theory with quantum mechanics is called quantum field theory, or QFT. So essentially, all the excitations of fields happen only in chunks of energy. The energy of the wave is determined by the mass of the particle. What is a mass? A mass of a particle is just the energy needed to vibrate its field. Energy, if you recall, is equivalent to mass using Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared. The field will simply not accept energies below a certain threshold. Once you tap the field hard enough, however, a particle is created. This discrete unit of energy that the field can accept is what we call the rest mass energy of the particle in a field. It is the fundamental amount of energy that must be added to the field in order to create a particle. So, for example, one electron is created when an electron field is excited by 0.511 mega electron volts, which is the mass of one electron. If you add energy equivalent to 0.4 mega electron volts, no particle gets created. If you put in 1.1 mega electron volts, then 2 electrons get created, and so on. This works for all the particles. All the electrons in your body and my body are waves in the same underlying field. The field is fundamental. The electrons are not. Also present in this room and your room are the up quark field and the down quark field. And all the atoms in your body are composed of particles, which are ripples in these 3 fields. It's the same field that you, I, and everyone on Earth is in. In fact, it's the same field that all the other planets and the sun is in. We are basically composed of ripples in the same 3 fields everywhere in the universe. Now, there's no indication that ripples in my field can communicate with the ripples in your field, but it's one continuous field and everything is connected to it. Measure it. So, for example, the shape of the electromagnetic field is the wave function of photons. The shape of the electric field is the wave function of electrons, and so forth. The wave function is what really exists. And when you observe the electron, you don't see the wave function because the wave function has collapsed into a discrete value. This can be predicted by Schrodinger's equation. The fields are vibrating and modulating, but when you measure them, they resolve into individual packets of energy called particles. So quantum mechanics says that fundamentally, reality is different when you measure it versus when you don't. Every particle in the universe is a tiny ripple in the underlying field, molded into a particle by the machinery of quantum mechanics.
So this is interesting because actually the entire universe is made up of fields, and these fields are interacting with each other. They say that there is a field of Shakti and there is a field of Shiva, and those fields interact to create a field of Vinayaka. It is the same thing what the scientists are saying. There is an up quark and a down quark, and these interact to form a neutron. And there is the interactions which generate protons. So, and these interact to form atoms. Now, this interaction is not actually a particle that's being created, but it is a ripple. When that ripple is big enough, so if you tap the wave field hard enough, a ripple forms which sustains itself, and that is what we see as physical reality. And it is amazing because I will just share this very extraordinary text from the Nasadiya Stukta, which is from the Rig Veda. And this has got something that is very beautiful of the Vedic interpretation of what reality is.
Nasada Sido Sada Sita Nasi Kachono किमवरीव कुहकस्य शर्मन्नं किमासीत्कवेरम् न मृत्युरासीदमृतं न दर्हिरात्यान्नासीत्कृतेतः आनीतपातं स्वधया तदेकं तस्माद्धान्यन्नवरः किञ्चिदास तमासीत्तमसा गूढमग्रे प्रकेतं सहितं सर्वमाहिरम् तुच्छेदात्वपितयदासीतपसस्तन्महिना जायतैकम् कामस्ततग्रे समवर्तताभिमनसूरेतः प्रथमं यदासीत् सतो बन्धुवसति निरविन्दन् हृदि प्रतिष्याकवयो मदीक्षा तिरश्चीनो विततो रश्मिरेशामनस्विनासीदुपरिस्विनासीत् प्रेतोधाः सन्महिमानसत्सधावस्थाप्रयति परस्तात् ओ अर्थावेदकर्यः प्रभो चक्षुराजातामुदयं विसृष्टिः अर्वाप्यैव अस्य विसर्जनेनाथा वेदयता बभूव इयं विसृष्टिर्यथा बभूव यदि वा तथैयदि वा न यो अस्याध्यक्षः परमेयो हंसो अङ्गवेद यदि वा न वेद ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ
So this is really the finest essence of the understanding that the Vedic tradition has on our reality. And it says that even what we call gods, like, Shiva and Brahma and Vishnu, they would not know how this creation happened because they are still the part of the manifest world. But who is that one who created in the first place, one who surveys all the heavens? And this Sukta says in the end, maybe he knows how it happened, or maybe he doesn't know how it happened. So this is so similar in terms of where the science stands, because everything you saw there, the up quarks, the down quarks, everything the Sukta is talking about. It is talking about how things have come from nothing, how the crisscrossing rays interact to create the primeval matter. So, there is so much of this. So when I was studying Mandala Vaatika, what I was really keen to know was how these fields interact. So I started doing research in another field of science, which is called semantics. And semantics is where you speak a mantra, you utter a sound. They are called Bij mantras, but you utter a sound and that sound creates patterns. So I constructed an instrument, and I'll just share a quick video of what I found when I played that kind of, let's just take a quick one on this. So this is various frequencies of sound and the patterns it's creating on a sand box. Yeah, on a piece of paper, I put some salt actually, and the salt, the waves, the sound is creating geometry. So you can see when we utter a sound, the sound can be in any tradition, any tradition. When there is sound uttered, the frequency of the sound can generate a pattern. The rangoli that we put in front of the house is a derivative of the Mandala Vaatika. In the olden days, a tulsi katta used to be there in the center, and they used to do this sacred geometry around it, and then they used to chant a mantra. That is the still surviving relic of the science of Mandala Vaatika. And then I collaborated with my friends in Yale in the Department of Forestry and Environment, Shirley and her team, where we analyzed plant frequencies. I don't have enough time today to show you those videos. I have them, but we will take it up some other time. But we actually captured the frequencies of plants. Different plants having different frequencies, and the way plants interact with those frequencies. And then it realized that these particular plant parts, or plant species, which are mentioned in the Mandala Vaatika, if we go through the text of Charaka Samiti, Charaka is the father of Ayurveda. And if you go through his text, he talks about how these plants have a tremendous effect on our own emotions and our mind, and how plants and your nakshatra, your star, time of birth, etc. In fact, the science of astrology itself is a mandala. That itself is a yantra. So all these things coming together, this science of Mandala Vaatika is something that I am really passionate about, because this is a science. If we don't create awareness for this, this will die. As it is, we've lost 104 Vedas. We've just got 4 left, right? This will be another thing that will go. So this is the thing that I now am very passionate about in propagating, and for people who wish to learn this particular science, I conduct workshops where I teach this particular science to people, so that you retain this tradition which is there, and 2, you experience, because the experience of drawing that mandala, experience of chanting that mantra, experience of putting that plant part in those various specific places, that is a very, very deep experience. So in this talk, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what the science is. It is a very deep science, and I really hope that in the years to come, it will revive itself, and people like you will take steps to popularize this, and maybe even teach this particular science. Yes, some of you might want to teach this particular science. So we need more of people like you to help us revive this ancient science. So this is basically, I will stop here because I think at 7:30 we close. So I would like to keep a little time. If there are any questions that you wish to post on chat, then I can give this, which ancient scripture or Veda? Well, the Veda that one needs is to look at is the Rig Veda. Okay, Rig Veda is the one that has chapters on this particular Mandala Vaatika. The other one is Vriksha Ayurveda. Vriksha Ayurveda, Supala's Vriksha Ayurveda. Vriksha Ayurveda has been commentaried by many people, but the Vriksha Ayurveda is another text. Charaka Samiti. So these are the texts that you would look at. Where would you find information about the workshop? Okay, what I will do is I'll just share this particular, I have a workshop on Durga Mandala Vaatika. Durga is a very interesting mandala, because unlike Siddhi Vinayaka and Varalakshmi, which I did in July, Durga is a disruptor. She is an energy, a tattva, who comes and really creates chaos so that a higher equilibrium, order of equilibrium can be established from the chaos. And especially this time we are going through this COVID. COVID is typically a manifestation of a Durga-like energy, where, that tattva will completely change and create chaos, so that from that chaos, a new order emerges. So aligning ourselves to that tattva in these times through the use of things like Mandala Vaatika will be extremely beneficial. So that is how during Navratri, I thought of this particular mandala. And you can see that registration link which says tiny.cc mandala. Sajani, I will share the link with her and she can share it with you. But otherwise, you're welcome to WhatsApp me on this number or email me, and I'll be more than happy to respond to your queries. Any more chats that are there any parks where yes, you will find a Nakshatra Mandala Vaatika at gate number 5 and the Art of Living Ashram when you enter. Perhaps not done to the strictest codes of the Vedic tradition, but nonetheless, a very good experience you can have. There is also inbuilt in that a Rashi Vana and a Navagraha Vana. So 3 Vanas you can experience. And are there any parks? Okay. So I think basically those were the questions that I was looking at. Yes, would you like to, did you not appear? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a Vidisha plot, which is, Vidisha as per Vastu. It is not having main directions, but having sub directions. So which mandala can be drawn? And because we want to build a house there as per Vastu, but which mandala can be drawn on that to have maximum benefit?
That may be a little bit of a overstretch to do an entire plot. What kind of mandala to be, to orient that entire plot into a mandala will be very difficult. Although I am doing it for very large townships, there is a 600-acre township near Chennai, which I am working as a consultant for the Mandala Vaatika design. But for your house, what I would suggest is build whatever house you want to build as per the best of the Vastu that is available to you. But what you could practice in that house would be certain mandalas which are beneficial, not beneficial, I would say more congruent with who you are.
So actually it's a
Can't hear.
Vidisha plot.
Yeah. So I understand that. Can we take this offline? Yeah.
Constructing house in
Come on WhatsApp me. Yeah.
Okay,
Then
fine.
offline we can discuss this. Yes.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Further questions? Right. Prabhakar, that was really amazing. Okay, someone has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me, Doctor?
Yes, very much.
All right. Okay. What are the benefits of Mandala Vaatikas to us humans? Is it just flowing with the energy flow of the universe? Is that what it is?
Okay. So this is akin to a question which has come out. If we are living in apartments, for example, now when you do a tabletop Mandala Vaatika is on a piece of paper, you draw the sacred geometry, then you offer the plant parts with a mantra to it. Okay, it is as simple as that. Okay, we take away all the mumbo jumbo and the frills. That is what is the basic content of a Mandala Vaatika. Now, what happens when you do a Mandala Vaatika? Okay, like for example, let us take the example of the upcoming Mandala Vaatika of Durga Mandala Vaatika. Okay, we are going through a chaotic period. Yeah, and if you always see, our planet has gone through chaos, then a new order emerges, then it goes through a period of prosperity and all that, and then again there is chaos, and again, whether it's the smallpox, Second World War, First World War, whatever it is, we have gone through that. Now, typically, of a tattva that is associated with this kind of a change, Durga Vaatika is you use it in 2 situations. When you find your life is in a rut and you're stuck, you're not able to make a change in life, then you invoke the Durga energy. And you can do that through a Durga Mandala Vaatika. Or your life is going through a chaotic period, in which case, when you align yourself to the wave function of the Durga energy, then you're congruent. You're not fighting it, but you are congruent with what it is wanting to do. That is my understanding of it, and that's how I have tried to look at it. But I believe ultimately, when you take away all the frills and all the rituals and everything, this is what the essence of these mandalas and Mandala Vaatika is. I hope I've been able to answer a bit of that.
Yes, you have. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Prabhakar Rao has said. So just 2 minutes, after which we will have the vote of thanks by Bina. So please reflect, do a lot of reflection on what has been said. Amazing things have been said today. So let's just think about them.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
1 minute silence, please. Okay, we shall now have the vote of thanks by Bina Michandani.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. It was just an amazing journey through Vedic civilization by the Saraswati River, right through to modern day, science and what the connection is between both of them. Thank you so much. We learned so much. I don't know where to start because we learned about the star and we learned about the focus of movement in the triangles, the Shakti and the Shiva energies. The 3 wave functions was very exciting to learn about. And what I was particularly interested was these fields that exist through the universe, which I think both, you say that science as well as Vedic tradition, both of them actually match in this particular instance. And that was also very, very interesting to learn. I'm definitely going to look up all this and learn more about it. But I did like that sentence that you said, which is, maybe he knows or maybe he doesn't know. I think we are all a little stuck in that sometimes. But yes, we do believe that there is some energy out there which actually puts such a beautiful universe together. So thank you so much for all this information. And it was a very, very insightful talk and very detailed. And I'm sure you have plenty of knowledge to share. So maybe we can have another exciting session with you on something else.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Yes.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you. Very nice session.
Thank you, Bina. And really, Prabhakar, we are really so blessed to have you over here with us. So we look forward to having you sometime again on, as Bina said, another subject.